Everybody, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Ron Placone and Steph Samarano, the miserable liberal.
Hello.
Oh, look at the mugs. That's so nice.
Our thirst is so quenched.
So
thanks to
nice.
these mugs.
Steph has a nice T-shirt on too.
Oh, this Jimmy?
Yeah. Oh, look, by the way, you can get a link right underneath there. You get those T-shirts, get those mugs. There's a link right there. Go to our store, help support our show. Because right now, guess what we're talking about? Paul Ryan had a problem with a nun. But I want to tell you this first. European governments redistribute income amongst their citizens on a much larger scale than does the United States government. So what happens in capitalism is capitalism eats itself, meaning that you don't have competition. It starts to eat its competition. So now you have monopolies, which is what we're kind of stuck with in America now, right? So there's only 5 banks in the whole, that's right. Everybody goes through those same banks. There's only 6 media companies in this. So what happens is what FDR realized is that if rich people wanted to save most of their money, they had to spread some of their money around, right? So a way to do that is strong unions. A way to do that is through tax policy. A way to do that is investing in social programs. So, the guy who runs the Amazon in Asia has said that the problem in America is not that we don't have a lot of cash. We do. We just don't spread it around. We don't distribute it right. So that really is our problem in America. And the way FDR dealt with it is he gave money to people. He gave them jobs, and he put money in their pockets, and everybody had. So there's enough to go around is the point. And capitalism left to itself, it won't do it. The Harvard Institute for Economic Research, that's what that is from. They say European governments redistribute income amongst their citizens on a much larger scale than does the United States government. European social programs are more generous and reach a larger share of their citizens, and the European tax systems are more progressive. Europe has more intrusive regulations that are often meant to protect the poor. That's from Harvard, a Harvard study. They were trying to figure out why is it that the United States doesn't spend as much on social programs as their counterparts in Europe. So that's what that was about. That's what they found. European governments redistribute income amongst their citizens on a much larger scale. Okay, so I bring this up because, this is a reprint of an article from Think Progress. The United Steelworkers, I was at their website. They reprinted an article by Jack Jenkins. And the headline is, a nun called out Paul Ryan on health care. His response was awkward. So a nun stood up to him. This was about the health care repeal. But this could have been about his budget in 2012, his tax policy with Trump. The Catholics who are real Catholics, meaning who take their faith seriously and their commitment to the poor and Jesus, have been pushing back against Paul Ryan for quite a while. Catholic nuns staunchly opposed the repeal effort of the Obamacare, with thousands signing onto a letter in June condemning the Senate bill as against our Catholic faith teaching. Their sentiment was echoed by Sisters of Mercy in another statement published a few days later, with authors arguing that the health care is a right and the GOP bill would make poor and vulnerable people suffer. The Catholic Health Association, headed by Sister Carol Keehan, also rebuked the health care bill. Even the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, which has clashed with nuns over health care legislation, spoke out against the GOP-led effort, describing it as simply unacceptable. So all different facts and even Catholic Charities. Their head, Dominican Sister Donna Markham, vehemently opposed the health care bill repeal effort, stated earlier this year, urging senators to reject the bill by saying its passage will have a devastating impact on the poor, marginalized, and vulnerable in our country. So all different sects of the Catholics have been coming at Paul Ryan for a long time, ever since he got in power, about how un-Catholic his policies are, his economic policies, his tax policies, and his healthcare policies, right? So here a nurse stands up to him at a town hall, and she asks him a good question.
I know that you're a Catholic, as am I. And it seems to me that most of the Republicans in the Congress are not willing to stand with the poor and working class, as evidenced in the recent debates about health care and the anticipated tax reform. So I'd like to ask you how you see yourself upholding the church's social teaching that has the idea that God is always on the side of the poor and dispossessed, as should we be.
Spoken like a great Dominican nun. Look.
Come on, sister. Jesus didn't wait for government to cure the lepers. He just did it himself. So now watch this bullshit answer. And I debated about how much of this to play and what not to. But so I'm going to play a lot more. I'm going to play probably 2 minutes of this guy's response. So here it is.
Sister, this may come as a surprise to you, but I completely agree with you. Where we may disagree is on how to achieve that goal. As you know, we all...
Yeah, like she's like the goal of helping poor people, like her way to achieve that is to actually help poor people. You give them assistance, you give them health care. His idea on how to help people is you take stuff away from them. That's Paul. It's a little different tactic.
She wants to help them, to give them a quality of life. He wants to help them die off.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about giving them a quality of life.
So their goals are the same. They want to help them.
Yeah.
They just want to do it differently. He wants to help them die, and she wants to help them live. Those would
Yeah.
be two different things.
But overall, they agree. He's right.
Overall,
Yeah,
they're on the same page.
different approaches.
exercise prudential judgment in practicing our faith. And for me, the preferential option for the poor, which is something that's a key tenet of Catholic faith, that means upward mobility. That means economic growth. That means equality of opportunity. That, to me, means working with this guy over here at Gateway Tech to make sure that we can close the skills gap, to make sure that every person who wants...
By the way, this is all bullshit. What he's saying right now, this is nothing. So this is the part I wanted to cut out because it's nothing. These are just empty platitudes that mean absolutely nothing. Nothing.
Career and job can get the benefits. We actually just passed this bill in July. Before that, we passed another skills bill. That means, to me, taking this 20th century poverty...
But by the way, when a politician passes a job skills bill, what that means is I'm going to give a tax break to my buddies who give me campaign contributions. I'm going to give them a tax break to train workers. Instead of making college affordable for people or letting people go to college for free, I'm going to give money to corporations. You train everybody. You educate them.
And whenever a politician says what that means to me, it means they're about to make a side note that has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
Let's
Yes.
keep watching.
Yeah, when he goes, well, what that means to me.
What that means to me.
And you know what? Ultimately, I'm thinking when I'm watching this, I'm like, Paul Ryan can say all these platitudes as much as he wants to say. However, but at some point, aren't they worried that their constituency is just going to get so sick and die? Who's going to vote for them?
No, they're not worried.
program that we have, which is, we're in the 32nd year of the war on poverty. Trillions spent, and guess what? Our poverty rates are about the same as they were when we started this war on poverty 32 years ago. So
what Paul Ryan is saying, you know all that money we spent on our poor people, giving them medicine and giving them food and housing? They're still poor. So we shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't give people housing. We shouldn't give them health care. We shouldn't give them education. And we shouldn't give them nutrition. We shouldn't give them food. We shouldn't give them assistance because we gave them assistance and they're not rich yet. Look, we've been giving them assistance for the last, look how much money we spent over the last 4 decades helping poor people. And guess what? They're still poor people. That's what he's saying. They're still poor people, you guys. So because they're still poor people, we should stop taking care of poor people. See, Paul Ryan says taking care of poor people doesn't work. Why? Because we've been spending money on poor people and they're still poor people. Why doesn't this cure poverty?
Maybe it's because I support a system that will inevitably have poor people in it.
Yeah.
No, it's because we're trying to help people.
The status quo isn't working, sister, so we have to do something that's even worse. That's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying.
The status quo, we spent a lot of money over the last decades, and look, let's listen to what he said. I'm going to play it again.
which is, we're in the 32nd year of the war on poverty. Trillions spent, and guess what? our poverty rates are about the same as they were when we started this war on poverty 32 years ago.
Oh, so see again? Yeah, he's right. We should have just not fed those people. We shouldn't have given them housing. We shouldn't have given them medicine. We should do nothing for them because they're not going to get rich from it. If you give a poor person health care, that doesn't make them rich. So don't give it to them. So he's saying spending money taking care of the poor is wasted if they don't become rich or if they don't get out of poverty. You can't. You go to help a poor person, that's evil. That's what he's saying.
And the nun looks very convinced by his answer.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
you see the nun?
She is sold.
The nun sees right through his bullshit. She sees right through it. You know who doesn't? Half the morons in that audience and Jake Tapper.
So the status quo isn't working, sister.
Status
and
quo
what
isn't
I think we
working.
need to do is change our approach on fighting poverty. Instead of measuring success based on how much money we spend or how many programs we create or how...
Well, let me just say, first of all, we don't want to judge it by how many people we feed or how many people we take care of or how many poor people we got health care. You don't want to judge it on that. Really? That's what you want to judge it on. Again, it's a fail. We took care of poor. We spent $2 trillion over the last 32 years taking care of poor people. And to him, that is a failure. The richest country the face of the earth has ever seen actually tried to take care of their poor people over the last 32 years. And guess what? That was a failure as far as Paul Ryan's concerned because all we did was take care of them.
You know what? I want to say a quick side note since Walter Becker from Steely Dan passed away recently. Don Fagan in his book says that whenever you hear a Republican talk about their ideas, it sounds like somebody describing a really boring dream. This is a prime example of that. What'd you dream about last night? I had this dream where I supported this policy that we could help hungry people by not feeding them. That was like, it made no sense. It was such a weird dream.
Let's listen to more.
People are on those programs, measuring on inputs. Let's measure success in poverty on outcomes. Is it working? Are people getting out of poverty? And what I believe, when you look at it that way, I actually have a commission that Patty Murray and I set up that's underway right now.
Yeah, when you look at it that way, you'll never give another nickel to a poor person. If you look at it that way, hey, I gave you money, and I gave you medicine, and I gave you shelter, and you're still poor, shame on you. It's not working. What the heck? This is literally and of course, Jake Tapper doesn't break in and stop him at any point. So you're saying the way to help poor people is to take stuff away from them, Paul?
To focus on these measurements, we need to make sure that we bring people into the workforce. The poor are being marginalized and misaligned in many ways because a lot of the programs that we have, well-intended as they may be, are discouraging and disincentivizing work. We were just
Yes, that's the problem. We have poor people because we have welfare. See, we didn't have any poor people. There was no need. We invented welfare, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of poor people. First of all, there isn't even welfare anymore. The Clintons got rid of it. What we have food stamps. They call it SNAP. You tell me.
Oh, and we also have corporate welfare.
Oh, sure.
And they'll spend trillions on
Yes,
corporations,
of course.
just not at the disenfranchised. And nor will the GOP or Democrats ever come up with a jobs program.
No jobs program. No, of course not. But
Yeah,
so these people, these programs disincentivize work. Yet you have no jobs program, and there aren't any jobs for people.
Well, that's a complete lie anyway.
Right.
I mean, most people on assistance are either actively looking for work or are working. Like what he just said, that's just a straight up lie.
Yes, that's just a straight up lie. He's just lying. Okay.
It's true. We were just talking about tax reform, and I was telling you about
You know all those kids on welfare, how they're just they just won't work. All the kids. Anyway.
These successful small businesses in Wisconsin, they got a 44.6% tax rate. That's not the highest tax rate payer. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, who deserves every salary, is not the highest tax rate payer in this state. You know who it is? It's a single mom getting $24,000 in benefits with 2 kids who will lose 80 cents on the dollar if she goes and takes a job. We have to fix that.
Yeah, and the way you fix that, Paul, is you make it not punitive for someone receiving assistance to go get a job. Not take away their assistance. Because if you take away their assistance, you're screwing her again. Now you're putting another big tax on her. So his big idea is these people would go work. There's these great jobs just laying around for people. That's why, but they won't take them because they're lazy. That's why they're on. So that's the same old BS. That's that Ayn Rand theory of, no, Adam Carolla's mom was depressed. She had depression and she was a single mom. And she had to go on assistance to help Adam Carolla, Mr. Right-wing libertarian. And he said, so what I'm saying is there's lots of people in desperate situations who temporarily need help. We're the richest country in the world. We spend the least redistributing our income. We can handle it. This is not what's wrong with the problem with America isn't we're helping our poor too much. The problem isn't in America isn't that we're investing too much in our workers and low income people. That's not the problem. The problem is we're spending $1 trillion on bombs every year, wasting it on nothing. So this is all him doing mental gymnastics, trying to figure out how we can screw over the poor, put the economic burden on the working class, and give tax cuts to the richest people. That's what this is. This is evil. That's what this is, evil personified. That's what this is. This is, I'm going to use all my mental acuity, hide behind religion to do it, to screw over poor people. That's what this is. He's got more to say.
And that is why we have to fix it, not by just kicking people off callously, but by making sure that we can customize these benefits to help a person get from where she is to where she wants and needs to be. That means we have these benefits phased out in a certain way that fits her needs.
What? We have these benefits phased out that fits her needs. Whose needs are you talking about? He's talking about a single mom. You're going to take away her benefits. That fits her needs. This is your big plan. Again, no jobs program. He doesn't have a plan to fix there's no jobs for people. That's why they're on assistance, Paul. People don't go on assistance because there's a bunch of jobs laying around that they don't want. Again, his big idea is to take away government help.
It sounded like he was saying customize kicking her off.
Yeah, he's going to customize kicking her off. So, and it's just words that can help her be successful.
We're going to give her a 20-minute warning and let her know.
So when Jesus took the fish and loaves and made enough for everybody, he was disincentivizing work.
Yeah, he really
was. That's
the
story from the Bible that Paul gets.
Yeah, well, he made them stop eating at some point. He's like, I'm sorry, get your own bootstraps.
You feed a man a fish, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. But that assumes that both men have a boat.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's got to provide that boat.
He goes and fixes it. The model I'm talking about is one you're familiar with. It's the Catholic Charities model. Cristo Rey Parish, right 4 miles that way. Cristo Rey Parish has Catholic Charities that does a fantastic job, in spite of government, doing wraparound benefits for the poor to make sure that they get to where they are from where.
Okay, Catholic Charities doesn't do the job they do in spite of government. Catholic Charities does the job they do because of government. Because they get half their funding from the goddamn government, Paul, you fucking liar. Catholic Charities wouldn't be able to do what they do without the government. And the lady who's a Dominican sister, who's the head of Catholic Charities, said that what you're doing is evil. You fucking liar. And Jake Tapper sits there and lets them say all this shit. Jake Tapper has no facts. He has no assistants. He has no helpers. He has no interns. He has no producers. Nobody can give him facts about any of this shit. By the way, Paul Ryan's been saying this shit since 2012. And nobody there. They just let him sit there and say this stuff. Jake Tapper just lets him say whatever he wants. And that nun knows he's full of shit.
Are to where they need to be. If only government would actually help do that as well, I think we could go a long ways in fighting the root cause of poverty.
You know, when we before they instituted Medicare for that's healthcare for senior citizens, the poverty rate for senior citizens was 33%. 33% of all seniors lived in poverty. So when you retired, you got poor because you got sick and you didn't have any money to pay your bills. So they instituted Medicare. Do you know that a decade after they instituted Medicaid, do you know what the poverty rate for senior citizens was? It was 11%. It went from 33% to 11% just by instituting Medicare. And this guy is a fucking lying used car salesman piece of shit who's demonizing the poor and doing mental gymnastics to hurt them even more while giving tax breaks to plutocrats and predatory capitalists. That's who Paul Ryan is. And guys like Jake Tapper let him fucking do it on his show. Because apparently Jake Tapper doesn't know anything about what I just told you. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know that every Catholic organization has denounced this guy, including the bishops, the Conference of Catholic Bishops, including the Catholic Charities nun, who he's quoting. Catholic Charities success. They do it in spite of government. They couldn't do it without government, you jagoff. So the article written in Think Progress says his response harkens back to an argument the House Speaker has made for years, namely that small government policy proposals, which often include slashing programs that aid lower-income Americans, will somehow help the poor. The argument was a big part of his effort to pass a budget bill in 2012 when he claimed that small government approaches mirrored the Catholic concept of subsidiarity. Yet Ryan's version of Catholic theology, which parallels a decades-long conservative effort to craft religious ideology that blasts the undeserving poor, was immediately met with resistance from the nuns. Sister Simone Campbell and her lobbying group Network launched a cross-country campaign called Nuns on the Bus that spoke out against Ryan's budget, which she described as immoral. His understanding of subsidiarity was also panned in Catholic publications. Subsidiarity is a concept that all decisions should be made as close to the ground level as possible and only as high up the chain of command as necessary. And the Catholics have showed that he's misrepresenting that idea to forward his bullshit Republican trickle-down economic agenda that hurts everyone except the wealthy. Ryan's response is, it's also awkward, his response to that nun, because for starters, Cristo Rey, remember he said what they're doing, they're doing right here at the Cristo Rey Parish. Cristo Rey Parish no longer exists. It merged with another parish. And Catholic Charities nun said that what he's doing is bullshit. And Catholic Charities couldn't do what they do without the goddamn government in the first place. Moreover, Catholic Charities doesn't, so he just says that. When Ryan championed President Donald Trump's budget proposal, which slashed welfare programs earlier this year, an anti-hunger faith group released a study estimating that every religious congregation in America would need to raise $714,000 a year for 10 years to shoulder the burden of caring for the poor. Every religious institution, every church, synagogue, mosque would have to raise $714,000 a year for 10 years to pay for the money the government was slashing. That ain't happening. Oh, there's your good Paul Ryan's bullshit Christian commitment to the poor. This is from the National Catholic Reporter. It says, Speaker Paul Ryan's Catholic Challenge. More than 90 Catholic theologians and scholars at the Jesuit University argued Ryan was profoundly misreading church teaching and distorting Catholic social doctrine to fit his political agenda. We would be remiss in our duty to you and to our students if we did not challenge your continuing misuse of Catholic teaching to defend a budget plan that decimates food programs for struggling families, radically weakens protections for the elderly and sick, and gives more tax breaks to the wealthiest few. Subsidiarity is not a free pass to dismantle government programs and abandon the poor to their own devices. His Georgetown critics also called out Ryan's infatuation with the libertarian icon. In short, your budget appears to reflect the values of your favorite philosopher, Ayn Rand, rather than the gospel of Jesus Christ. Her call to selfishness and her antagonism toward religion are antithetical to the gospel values of compassion and love. That's what the Catholics say about Paul Ryan. You know what Jake Tapper says to Paul Ryan? Not a fucking thing. Lets him sit there and bullshit like that to that nun.
Fun side note, there is a religious leader who says, my philosophy is basically the teachings of Ayn Rand. Who am I referring to? Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan.
Ha!
It's true.
So I just want you to, every time you see Paul Ryan talk like that, and that's a used car salesman. That is bullshit talking points put together in a corporate think tank to do mental gymnastics to defend giving tax breaks to the richest people in the world. While half the country in the richest country in the world remains poor or low income, and needing medical care. That's who Paul Ryan is. So every time you see that, or you see Republicans or Democrats, you've heard Democrats say that bullshit too. Equality of opportunity. That's both parties talking right there. Equality of opportunity. That's the Democrats and the Republicans. That's the corporate class. That's who Paul Ryan represents. That's who Chuck Schumer represents. That's who Nancy Pelosi represents. The corporate class. The white-collared suburbanites. That's who they represent. Nobody is representing workers anymore. Nobody's representing the people that none is talking about. Nobody. And nobody in the press is standing up for them either. No one. When was the last time you saw CNN or MSNBC do a special on income inequality? When was the last time you saw MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post have Paul Krugman come on and talk about how inequality was inevitably going to lead to fascism, which we have now with Trump? No, they don't talk about that. It was the failure of the Democratic Party and the elite to address problems in our economy that led to this? No, no one will ever say that. You still got another goddamn book from Hillary Clinton pointing her finger again at everybody else, Bernie Sanders. Anybody trying to fix the problem, they'll wag their finger at.
You know, Jimmy, every time I see Paul Ryan, I just immediately go to when he was running for vice president with Mitt Romney, and he was doing one of those propaganda junkets where they would go to a soup kitchen and show them handing out food, except what Paul Ryan decided to do, that he would help wash dishes, except they were already cleaned.
Yeah.
And
Remember
I think
that?
they should show that every single time so you know exactly who this asshole is.
And he is an asshole. Remember that. Yes, let's remember. Let's get a picture of Paul Ryan cleaning already cleaned pots and pans in a soup kitchen. Him and his whole fucking family were doing it. That's true. That's true. That's who Paul Ryan is, that used car salesman piece of shit. That's who Paul Ryan is. And don't ever forget it. Hey everybody, we have 2 live Jimmy Dore shows in September. September 25th, we're in San Diego, and September 18th in Burbank, California. Get your tickets right there. There's a link right there.